During a live broadcast, Donald Trump prompted Adam Schiff to display an empty piece of paper to the viewing audience. Schiff grasped an open leather folder utilizing both of his hands. The uppermost paper situated within this specific folder contained absolutely no text. While holding this document, he continued his vocal delivery without interruption. He continuously repeated phrases that he had utilized on numerous previous occasions across various different platforms. These specific statements were foundational to the development of his entire professional background. He verbally asserted that the proof he discussed was clearly visible to everyone. Following this statement, he rotated the folder to present its internal contents to the physical audience within the room. This specific physical action was similar to a person revealing a successful set of playing cards by turning them upward. The audience members shifted their posture forward to observe the item closely. The recording equipment zoomed in tightly on the folder. The visual result for all observers was a completely blank white document. There was absolutely nothing written on the surface of the paper. His hands ceased any further movement immediately. Donald Trump maintained a completely steady vocal volume. He directed his vision toward the folder initially. Subsequently, he directed his vision toward the individual holding the folder. He permitted a brief period of total quiet to occur without intervention. This intentional silence occurred while approximately 40 million individuals were watching the broadcast. Trump stated that Schiff had been repeating those specific assertions for multiple consecutive years. Trump instructed him to present the information to the viewers directly. He noted that the public had been waiting and observing for the entire duration of the controversy. To comprehend how an individual who dedicated 3 years to guaranteeing the public that undeniable proof existed ended up standing before them holding an empty document, a chronological review is necessary. One must review the events that occurred roughly 40 minutes prior to this moment. At that earlier time, Adam Schiff maintained total confidence that the folder would provide him with an advantageous outcome. He believed it would function exactly as it had in numerous prior situations. The event location was filled to its maximum physical capacity that evening. Representatives from 3 different media networks were present in the designated area. Information had circulated widely that these 2 specific individuals would eventually occupy the same presentation stage. The general public typically ensures they observe events possessing this specific dynamic. An educator residing in the Virginia area was seated in the second row of the audience. She had accepted all of his public statements as entirely factual for a period of 3 years. This belief system had directly caused a separation between her and her brother. She operated her vehicle to the event entirely by herself that evening. Her primary objective was to receive final verification of the claims one last time. Her presence and circumstances are highly relevant to the conclusion of these events. Adam Schiff approached the presentation area with the specific demeanor of a legal professional approaching a podium. He appeared completely confident, resembling someone who had successfully debated this topic many times previously within that exact space. He placed his leather folder downward on the surface. He carefully aligned the folder parallel to the edge of the table. When granted permission to speak by the facilitator, he utilized the opportunity immediately. He manipulated the opportunity like a tool he had operated throughout his lifespan. Schiff initiated his speech by expressing a desire to communicate truthfully. He stated that the national population had been provided with a highly reassuring narrative. This narrative suggested that the allegations were entirely fabricated and constituted nothing more than targeted harassment. He communicated his comprehension regarding why the public found that specific narrative reassuring. He reasoned that believing the narrative required absolutely zero mental effort or action from the public. Following this statement, he displayed a slight patient facial expression. He continued by stating that specific individuals, including himself, had reviewed the actual confidential information. He noted that these specific individuals occupied restricted areas to observe data. He emphasized that the general viewing public situated at home would never receive authorization to view this classified data. He requested pardon for his refusal to treat a media broadcast location as an equivalent to a formal legal environment. He explicitly stated that the vast majority of the national population simply lacked the capacity to comprehend the provided data. A distinct audible reaction spread rapidly across the physical space. It was not a sharp intake of air, but rather a more subdued and significantly colder noise. He had essentially informed every remote viewer watching from various domestic locations that they lacked the intellectual capability to follow the situation. He implied that the factual truth existed exclusively within a restricted, locked room. He suggested the public would never possess the necessary intelligence to enter that room. He delivered this entire assessment accompanied by a visible smile. He operated under the assumption that his statement would be perceived by the audience as profound insight. The statement was absorbed by the audience, but it was definitively not perceived as profound insight. If a government official located in Washington has ever informed you that you lack the status, credentials, or clearance to comprehend reality, please interact with the approval function immediately. The individual who delivered that assessment directly to the public is subsequently requested to validate his assertions. He transported a specific folder specifically for that validation process. Let us continue observing this sequence of events. Donald Trump refrained from displaying any reaction to the derogatory comment. Although frequently described by the public as a combative person, he demonstrated an ability to remain remarkably motionless. He utilized this lack of motion when it served as an optimal strategic tactic. He remained completely motionless during this specific moment. He permitted Schiff to complete his entire statement without any interruption. He permitted the audience approval that Schiff anticipated to remain entirely absent. He allowed the quiet atmosphere to persist for an uncomfortable duration. The delay extended until several individuals began to question if he was paying attention to the speech at all. Eventually, he adjusted his posture toward the audio transmitter. Trump verbally evaluated the speech as excellent in a highly sarcastic manner. He specifically referenced Schiff's mentions of the restricted areas and the confidential information that exclusively Schiff was permitted to view. Trump stated to the audience that he had listened to that specific argument previously. He noted he had been subjected to that exact argument for a period of several years. He moved his hand over in a relaxed manner. He was functioning as a presenter, locating his specific target. He proposed executing an action that is rarely permitted in these environments. He suggested requiring Schiff to physically present the information rather than merely providing vocal descriptions of it. Trump stated he possessed specific chronological markers. He indicated he had physically documented these dates for reference. He expressed his belief that the viewing audience could comprehend the information without any difficulty whatsoever. This was in direct contradiction to Schiff's claim regarding audience intelligence. Schiff responded by stating the event was not a trivia competition. Trump countered that the situation was superior to a competition. He explained this superiority was due to the fact that the responses were already documented on the official public record. He emphasized that Schiff himself had established that specific record. Trump reached downward and elevated a solitary piece of paper. He executed this action without any exaggerated physical movements. He performed it similar to an individual removing a transaction document from a surface. He referenced the specific time period of March 2017. Trump reminded Schiff of his appearance on a national television broadcast featuring Chuck Todd. Trump recounted that Todd asked Schiff a direct question regarding the possession of explicit proof. Trump quoted Schiff's response, wherein Schiff affirmed he was currently reviewing the proof. Trump noted that Schiff specifically stated the information was more substantial than mere indirect data. Trump then placed the paper horizontally on the surface. He reiterated the phrase regarding the information being more substantial than indirect data. Trump described how Todd naturally requested specific details, given the sheer magnitude of the assertion. Trump quoted Schiff's exact reply, which was a direct refusal to discuss the specific details. Trump elevated his gaze from the document. He emphasized that March of 2017 occurred a significant duration ago. He noted that individuals who were secondary students at that time are currently employed in the workforce. Trump stated he harbored only one inquiry. He clarified it was the exact identical inquiry posed by Chuck Todd. He demanded to know the specific details. The physical space became completely devoid of noise. The atmosphere reflected a collective desire for the response combined with a slight apprehension regarding the potential answer. Schiff articulated that the scenario was not uncomplicated. He argued there is a crucial variation between observing indications of unauthorized cooperation and possessing the capacity to establish a legal violation without any doubt. Schiff maintained that he never conflated those two distinct concepts at any point. He asserted he consistently exercised extreme caution regarding that specific separation of concepts. Trump acknowledged that separation as a valid concept. However, Trump pointed out that the separation did not address his specific inquiry. Trump reminded Schiff that his television appearance did not consist of expressing mere intuitions. Trump noted Schiff did not utilize terminology suggesting mere suspicion. Trump recalled that Schiff claimed to possess information far exceeding indirect data. Trump emphasized that Schiff claimed to possess this information physically in his hand. Trump struck the document a single time. Trump clarified his inquiry was not focused on what Schiff suspected. Trump demanded to know what physical items Schiff possessed and requested the specific details immediately. Schiff affirmed his continued commitment to every single word he had previously issued. Trump expressed approval of this commitment. Trump displayed a partial smile. Trump advised Schiff to retain that commitment, predicting it would be highly necessary later in the discussion. A common misconception regarding individuals with Trump's characteristics is the belief that their primary tactic relies on audio volume. Conversely, his primary tactic is his willingness to delay. He exhibits a strong willingness to permit the opposing party to speak extensively. When an individual speaks extensively about an item they are unable to present, the absence of that item becomes increasingly prominent and burdensome. Trump elevated the second document. He referenced the chronological period of December 2017. He noted this occurred several months following the initial example. He pointed out Schiff was appearing on the CNN network during this instance. Trump observed that Schiff was no longer utilizing any cautious language. Trump quoted Schiff informing the national audience directly that a foreign entity proposed assistance. The political organization accepted the assistance, the foreign entity provided the assistance, and the executive leader utilized that assistance completely. Trump placed this second document adjacent to the initial document. Initial assessment. This behavior did not align with an individual exercising caution. Characterization. The statements functioned as a final legal summation. Analogy. It resembled an individual informing a legal panel that the issue is definitively resolved. Specific actions. He highlighted the four sequential actions: proposed, accepted, provided, and utilized. Trump noted Schiff guided the national audience through all four sequential actions. Schiff maintained he would reiterate those exact statements. Trump acknowledged the high probability of that repetition. Trump then identified a significant contradiction. He tapped the second document located next to the first. Trump pointed out that during the identical chronological period Schiff made those definitive statements on television, he was simultaneously stating that the information did not constitute absolute proof. Trump requested clarification regarding which of the two positions was accurate. He asked if the situation was definitively resolved through the four steps, or if the situation was complicated and required extreme caution. He questioned how the information could be clearly visible while the specific details remained prohibited from discussion. Trump extended his hands outward. He noted Schiff continuously utilized the specific phrase, indicating the information was clearly visible. Trump observed that whenever an individual requested Schiff to specify the location of the information, Schiff reverted to discussing the restricted area. This area was entirely inaccessible to any other individual. Trump noted the logical inconsistency of information being clearly visible while simultaneously being visible exclusively to Schiff. Trump sarcastically commended this method as an impressive trick and expressed a desire to acquire the skill. At this precise moment, Adam Schiff executed a specific tactic that had previously protected him in numerous similar situations. He entirely avoided debating the specific chronological dates presented. His intellect prevented him from engaging in a debate regarding established dates. Instead, he fundamentally altered the subject of the disagreement. Schiff initiated a discussion regarding behavioral standards. His vocal delivery regained its previous volume and intensity. This occurred because expressing absolute certainty was a behavioral state, where he consistently experienced total security. Schiff proposed discussing these standards. He asserted a division exists within the national population regarding two distinct ideologies. He described the first group as individuals who believe any behavior is acceptable if it cannot be legally prosecuted in a formal judicial setting. He characterized this ideology as believing no regulations exist, allowing an executive leader to perform any action provided a legal professional cannot finalize a prosecution. He described the second group as individuals who believe government employees possess obligations that greatly exceed standard legal statutes. He argued these employees are permitted and obligated to alert the national population regarding unethical and hazardous behavior. He emphasized this requirement exists even if the behavior falls slightly short of a prosecutable violation. Schiff declared he had never experienced any embarrassment regarding adherence to that specific standard. He confirmed he was currently not experiencing embarrassment regarding it. He expressed his belief that the vast majority of the national population did not align with the president on this particular issue. He expressed his belief that the population aligned securely with his perspective. For a brief duration, this argument achieved genuine effectiveness. The physical audience aligned with his perspective completely. The argument was a well-executed rhetorical maneuver. It possessed the practiced execution of numerous similar past maneuvers. A journalist located in the third row ceased their documentation activities and signaled agreement slowly. A junior employee situated directly behind Schiff compressed his lips and signaled strong agreement twice. The educator seated in the second row, who had attended to regain her confidence, experienced a rapid return of that internal confidence within her chest. She recognized the individual presenting the argument as the person she recalled from the past. She recognized his vocal delivery as the element that sustained her through 3 distinct years of holiday gatherings. The momentum of the interaction belonged entirely to him at that moment. This momentum was sustained for a duration of approximately 20 seconds. A federal legislative representative had just communicated to a national viewing audience that an individual can possess culpability even without verifiable improper actions. For a period of 20 seconds, that concept appeared somewhat honorable. If this specific concept causes an involuntary physical reaction of severe discomfort, please input a single word in the interaction section. Input the word particulars. Continue observing as the foundational dynamic is about to shift significantly. Donald Trump did not exhibit any physical reaction whatsoever. His demeanor did not become less severe. He completely avoided the anticipated reaction that the speech was designed to elicit. He avoided adopting a defensive posture regarding legal definitions, evidence, and legal professionals. He did not allow Schiff to remain unchallenged on the newly established ethical position. He accessed a third document that had previously remained completely unobserved beneath the initial 2 documents. Trump characterized the preceding speech as aesthetically pleasing, maintaining a very quiet volume. He acknowledged the concept of a higher obligation. He expressed a strong desire to analyze the concept seriously. Because Schiff asserted the issue involved individuals who believe any behavior is acceptable, Trump proposed reading a list of entities that formally objected to Schiff's behavior. He positioned the document securely. He cited the precise date of June 21, 2023. He identified the objecting entity as the legislative body itself. He explicitly clarified the objecting entity was not himself, his legal representatives, or specific media organizations. He stated the legislative body conducted a formal numerical count. He elevated his gaze slowly. He recited the numerical result as 213 to 209. He stated the body voted to formally reprimand Schiff on the official public record. He specified the reprimand was for delivering inaccurate information to the national population regarding unauthorized cooperation. He informed Schiff that he was only the 3rd individual within the current century to receive this specific legislative action. The physical space became exceptionally quiet. Trump continued by detailing the actions of Schiff's peers during the numerical counting process. He described how they congregated around Schiff within the legislative area. He noted they loudly vocalized words of severe disapproval at the individuals participating in the voting process. He placed the document horizontally on the surface. Trump observed a fundamental characteristic regarding vocalized disapproval. He stated that vocalization does not alter mathematical values. He noted an individual can vocalize disapproval at maximum volume, but the number 213 remains mathematically greater than the number 209. He explained that the vocalization eventually ceases, but the numerical result remains permanently documented in the official record. Schiff responded by categorizing the numerical count as a merely politically motivated action. However, a noticeable alteration occurred within his vocal delivery. The pitch elevated slightly. This represented the initial degradation of his previous absolute certainty. He claimed that all observers understood the nature of the event perfectly. Trump acknowledged the possibility of that claim. Nevertheless, Trump pointed out a severe contradiction. He reminded Schiff that he had just informed the national population that the issue involved fundamental principles. Schiff had framed the conflict as one political group opposing the concept of a higher obligation. Trump then noted that the entire legislative institution collectively documented Schiff's identity alongside individuals reprimanded 100 years prior. Trump emphasized this action was an institutional record, not a personal action by Trump himself. Trump reminded Schiff of his claim that the national population supported him. Trump countered this by stating the representatives of that population conducted a formal count, and Schiff simply lacked the necessary numbers. At this juncture, the fundamental dynamic shifted significantly. This shift did not produce any audible noise. The shift resembled the physical transfer of substantial mass. It was comparable to a sustained physical burden gradually exceeding one's capacity to maintain it. The educator located in the second row experienced this shift internally prior to fully comprehending it intellectually. The previously restored confidence she experienced altered into an unfamiliar sensation. She had dedicated 3 years to maintaining an attitude of absolute certainty. She was currently developing the realization that certainty is a condition one can only temporarily acquire from another individual. This temporary acquisition remains valid only while that individual maintains verifiable documentation. The specific individual from whom she acquired this certainty had just been presented with a mathematical reality that could not be dismissed through vocalization. That reality involved his own legislative institution. The entire legislative body conducted a formal procedure, resulting in a public record stating he delivered inaccurate information. This was a formal procedure, not a digital social media post or a personal viewpoint. If you have received moral instruction regarding honesty from an individual subsequently penalized officially for dishonesty, you comprehend the events within that physical space. Subscribe to this platform immediately. This action is requested because the narrative evolves from analyzing a single interaction to analyzing a behavioral trend extending across multiple years. Trump permitted the quiet atmosphere to persist entirely. He consumed a small quantity of liquid at a reduced speed. He deposited the container on the surface, producing a minor, intentional clicking noise. For a brief duration, that specific noise was the singular auditory event within the location. He stated he would typically conclude his participation at that moment. His delivery indicated complete sincerity regarding this statement. Observers could easily detect the sincerity in his vocal tone. He expressed a desire for the audience to register his subsequent statement clearly. He posited a hypothetical scenario involving a singular instance of poor performance during a broadcast. He noted that individuals occasionally exceed their competence levels on live broadcasts. He acknowledged his own history of making numerous statements. This acknowledgement generated a minor wave of amusement from individuals supporting his perspective. Therefore, he clarified his objective was not to permanently damage an individual's professional standing based on a single statement. He reiterated his lack of intent to do so. However, he asserted the current situation did not involve a single statement. He categorized the behavior as a repetitive tactic executed continuously over several years. He noted Schiff developed a high level of proficiency with this tactic. Consequently, Trump concluded the national population had acquired the entitlement to observe the tactic analyzed methodically in slow motion. He accessed the contents of his personal folder. For individuals monitoring the situation, this represented the entirety of the documentation. There was no massive storage container or exaggerated presentation. The documentation consisted merely of a limited number of low-thickness documents that inherently provided negative information regarding Adam Schiff simply due to their existence. Trump reminded Schiff of his previous leadership position. He specified Schiff was the leader of the Intelligence Oversight Group. He categorized this position as the most influential assignment nationally regarding matters of this specific nature. Trump noted that Schiff's specific group conducted formal inquiries with 57 individuals. These inquiries were conducted with the individuals legally sworn to provide accurate information. He extracted the relevant document. He referenced the 57 distinct written records of these inquiries. He asked rhetorically about the conclusive results demonstrated by those written records upon completion of the process. He answered his own inquiry by stating the records demonstrated a complete absence of proof regarding unauthorized cooperation. He emphasized this was the result of Schiff's specific inquiry, utilizing Schiff's selected individuals within Schiff's specific group. He deposited the document on the surface. Trump then requested the remote viewing audience to consider Schiff's subsequent action carefully. Trump reiterated Schiff's leadership status. He noted Schiff possessed the written records. He highlighted that these records contracted the narrative Schiff had been distributing to the national population for a period of 2 years. Trump stated Schiff secured these documents within a storage compartment for a duration approaching 2 years. He stated Schiff refused to permit the release of these documents. Trump elevated his gaze. For the initial instance during the interaction, his expression contained an element approaching astonishment. He noted Schiff finally authorized the release of the documents exclusively on the day immediately prior to the executive branch authorizing their release independently. He emphasized the timing was not a week or a month prior, but precisely the day before. He noted this occurred when Schiff possessed 0 alternative options. Trump identified the documents as restricted data requiring a specific procedure for removing the restriction. Trump asserted he executed that procedure with absolute precision. He suggested Schiff would comprehend this adherence if Schiff had ever successfully adhered to an established procedure during his lifespan. Trump physically interacted with the document by tapping it. He reminded Schiff of his frequent assertion that the information was clearly visible. He identified this specific combination of words as Schiff's standard statement. He noted Schiff repeated this assertion for multiple years, claiming the information was available for universal observation. Trump then described how Schiff took the singular collection of documents containing factual data and concealed it from observation for a period of 2 years. Trump extended his hands outward in a controlled manner. He presented a logical impossibility. He stated information cannot simultaneously exist in a state of clear visibility and remain secured within a storage compartment. He instructed Schiff to select one of the 2 options. He summarized the options. Either the information was universally observable, or it was exclusively observable by Schiff, who found the contents unsatisfactory. The audience reaction shifted significantly at this moment. The initial reaction was not amusement. The reaction was considerably more detrimental to Schiff than amusement. It consisted of the auditory output of several hundred individuals expelling air from their lungs simultaneously. This occurred as they collectively acquired the identical comprehension at the exact same moment. This specific auditory output indicates a collective decision to entirely revoke any favorable assumptions previously granted to an individual. It resembled the predictable recession of oceanic water. He concealed the singular document collection containing the factual data for a 2-year period while continuously informing the public it was clearly visible. If this information generates a physiological reaction of discomfort, distribute this media to a single individual who maintained trust in his statements during that period. Distribute it to merely one individual. Following that action, return immediately to the media. The subject is preparing to deliver an additional retaliatory argument. This argument represents his most forceful remaining option. Schiff did not surrender without resistance. He adjusted his posture within his seating arrangement. He moved the audio transmitter closer to his position. He responded forcefully with all his remaining capability. His response possessed notable substance. He challenged the reduction of his entire professional history to the contents of a single folder. His vocal delivery was low, rapid, and entirely steady. He agreed to discuss his professional history. He highlighted his past experience prosecuting actual violators before his opponent ever entered the political arena. He mentioned enduring undisclosed intimidation while serving on the oversight group. He asserted he kept this intimidation undisclosed because it was a requirement of the position. He asserted he never once claimed to the public that he had legally established a violation in a judicial setting. He stated he solely claimed there was information requiring examination. Schiff argued that conducting an examination does not constitute a fabrication. He argued issuing an alert does not constitute a deception. He maintained he performed his necessary duties. He stated he presented inquiries that a liberated society must ask regarding influential individuals. He accused his opponent of attempting to convince 40 million observers that presenting an inquiry constituted a violation. He categorized this as the most perilous concept articulated during the event. He warned that the viewers should experience concern regarding it, regardless of their personal opinion of him. This response was highly effective temporarily. It was genuinely well constructed. The intensity within his section of the room increased. Several individuals ceased documentation. The prevailing dynamic, which had shifted away from him, temporarily destabilized. Trump allowed him to conclude completely. He permitted the entire argument to register with the audience. Then Trump responded with a completely level, serious, and direct demeanor. Trump stated quietly that no individual fears an inquiry. The audience shifted forward due to his reduced volume. Trump stated he desired a nation that presents all inquiries. He invited any inquiry. However, he pointed out that Schiff did not merely pose an inquiry. Trump placed his fingers on the initial and final documents. He accused Schiff of appearing before the nation for 3 years and declaring he already possessed the definitive results. Trump recalled the claims of possessing proof exceeding indirect data and being clearly visible. He recalled the sequential steps: proposed, accepted, provided, utilized. He argued that delivering a conclusion is entirely different from asking a question. Trump stated Schiff announced a daily conclusion based on data he never possessed. Trump maintained his position. He inquired regarding who suffered the consequences of these actions. He clarified he did not suffer consequences, noting his current stable position. His vocal tone lowered significantly. It entered a phase unreached during the prior events. He discussed the social consequences, mentioning families fracturing. He provided an example of a mother terminating communication with her son over headwear. He provided an example of 2 brothers ceasing communication since 2017. He provided an example of friends labeling each other as enemies at social gatherings and failing to reconcile. He stated half of the citizens were instructed that the remaining half were foreign operatives for a period of 3 years. Trump noted people lost their actual family relationships over this issue. He noted holiday gatherings permanently ceased. He paused to let the information register. Trump concluded that this entire multi-year conflict originated directly from a folder Schiff recognized as empty. He asserted Schiff knew he possessed contradictory written records within his storage compartment. Absolutely no laughter occurred following this statement. The statement penetrated the atmosphere to a level where fundamental decisions are formed. In the second row, the educator remained completely motionless. She was reflecting on her estranged sibling. She was reflecting on the missing presence at her family gatherings for 3 consecutive holidays. She was engaging in a form of mental calculation she strongly preferred to avoid. Schiff attempted to initiate a response utilizing respectful terminology. Trump interrupted politely, stating the time for respectful terminology had concluded. He stated respect was appropriate prior to Schiff insulting the audience's capacity to comprehend the situation. He affirmed his own comprehension and the audience's comprehension. Schiff relied on his singular known method to salvage the situation. He reached for his personal leather folder. This was the object he transported to the stage to function as protection. It was the object designated to contain the specific details and physical documents. The action was purely reflexive instinct. It was the specific maneuver that had previously never failed him. It was an attempt to acquire the document that would validate his claims. He opened the folder before the audience. He began turning the pages rapidly to locate the document that would disprove the accusations. However, no such document existed. He moved past a media article. He moved past an internal memorandum. He turned pages backward and forward. His absolute certainty was visibly diminishing during the live broadcast in front of 40 million viewers. The leader of the Intelligence Oversight Group was searching his own materials for information that had never existed in any location. The sole auditory input in the silent location was the physical manipulation of the paper documents. The manipulation accelerated, then decelerated, and eventually ceased entirely. His hand rested completely flat on an empty document. Trump stated quietly that it was never clearly visible. Those specific words accomplished what years of debate failed to achieve. Schiff looked down at the pristine paper situated under his hand. This standard sheet of paper revealed the objective reality of the situation to the entire nation. He slowly shut the folder, utilizing both of his hands. The action resembled an individual securing an item they no longer rely upon. The sound of the leather material closing echoed throughout the entirely silent area, similar to a door shutting. The facilitator cleared his throat into the silence. He asked formally if the representative desired to reply. The representative declined the opportunity to reply. The sound of an individual closing an empty folder within a completely silent room represents the auditory conclusion of a multi-year narrative collapsing on live television. If this specific event impacts you, enable alerts immediately to observe the subsequent events following the cessation of recording. The physical room emptied, but the situation continued. Remain attentive. When the environmental illumination increased, the segment already possessed a widely recognized designation. The designation was highly unfavorable to him. An individual had isolated the specific 40-second segment. The segment featured Schiff displaying the empty paper, the physical search for documents, and Trump's final comment. By the afternoon period, it dominated all digital platforms entirely. The most concerning aspect for Schiff was the shift in public discourse. The public was no longer discussing foreign interference. They were no longer debating unauthorized cooperation, conspiracies, procedures, or restricted data classifications. These were the massive topics he had dedicated 3 years attempting to maintain as the primary focus. There were absolutely no remaining topics for debate. The public was simply repeatedly viewing an individual holding an empty document while claiming he possessed proof on a continuous loop. The evening news programs featured the still image of the open, empty folder facing the recording device. One network displayed only Trump's final words on a dark background. No additional information was required. The visual image communicated everything necessary. Outside in the corridor, a journalist intercepted a fellow political representative who frequently supported Schiff's voting positions for years. The individual explicitly requested anonymity. He checked his surroundings carefully before speaking, a common practice in that facility before delivering factual information. He admitted quietly and rapidly that everyone was entirely aware the folder lacked substance. He stated they supported it for years out of loyalty, even when it caused difficulties. However, he noted it is impossible to justify an empty document. He stated no public announcement can erase the visual memory of an empty document. He predicted Schiff would realize this reality shortly. He departed the area quickly before the recording device could be positioned. The educator from the second row operated her vehicle to her residence in the darkness alone. She kept her audio equipment deactivated. She did not require auditory input. Near the regional border, she parked on the edge of the roadway. She left the vehicle engine operating and activated her warning indicators. She retrieved her mobile communication device. She viewed a specific numeric contact she had ignored for 3 years. She reflected on the auditory input of the papers moving. She reflected on the trusted individual searching for non-existent information. She recognized she had sacrificed her relationship with her brother to maintain belief in that non-existent information. She did not initiate the connection immediately. She decided she would initiate the connection during the upcoming weekend. It would be her most difficult and beneficial communication of the entire year. This resolution commenced on the edge of a dark roadway with warning indicators active. As for Donald Trump, he executed an action that defied expectations. He remained almost entirely silent. He stood from his seating arrangement. He secured his clothing. While passing the specific location where Adam Schiff remained seated, he reached over. He reopened the leather folder so it rested facing the recording devices. The empty document was positioned upward. He left it in that exact configuration. He allowed the equipment to record the lack of substance he intended to reveal to the nation. One entirely empty document proved to be the only requirement. If this specific narrative engaged you at all, interact with the approval button so the system distributes it to more individuals who spent 3 years being labeled dishonest by an individual holding an empty folder. If you believe objective reality warrants more than a repeated television phrase until people cease requesting validation, subscribe to this platform immediately. Input the word particulars in the comments section. Distribute this to someone who experienced broken relationships with friends or siblings during those 3 years. They will profoundly comprehend the underlying reality. Your input is highly significant. Your inquiries were always completely justified. The data ultimately was never clearly visible for the most basic fundamental reason possible.